Thank you, Gisette. It's lovely to be here. My name is Alistair Smith. I'm the editor of The Stage and one of the two people who have programmed this conference and will be hosting you today. My colleague, Amanda Parker, will be on stage very shortly to chair one of our opening panels and will also be hosting the afternoon sessions. I'd also like to introduce Jenny Hale and Lawrence Pass, who will be signing for us today. Now, we've run the Future of Theatre conference twice before, both as digital-only events. This year is the first time we've hosted as a hybrid event. So, like theatre, the event is ever-evolving, so we'll be contacting you in the next few days to hear what you thought of it, ask for your feedback. Please do let us know what you think. Now, we would not be able to be here today without our sponsors, so thank you very much to Central for hosting us today, to Arts Council England for supporting our subsidised ticket scheme for freelancers, and also to our other sponsors, Amp Theatre, Preview, Tate, GSA, Moore Kingston Smith, Rocket Global, and Nesta. Now, that's enough from me. Let's move on to our first session, which is a keynote speech by Arts Council England Chief Executive Darren Henley. Following the speech, I'll be doing my best Fiona Bruce impersonation, and I'll be back on stage to chair a Q&A with Darren. If you're watching online, please remember to put your questions in the chat, put them in capitals, and then we'll know that they are a public question. And if you're with us here in the room, put your thinking caps on, and I will come to you shortly. So, please welcome to the stage, Darren Henley.
Good morning. One of the great things about my job is that I get to witness the innovation and excellence of our creative people and cultural organisations every day. Recently, I went to see the Rambert dance production, Peaky Blinders, The Redemption of Thomas Selby. And it brings to life, in a new way, the story and characters familiar to millions who adored the small screen version. At the interval, I was chatting to those sitting either side of me in Bradford's Alhambra Theatre. One couple were avid fans of the teledrama, but they hadn't seen a dance production in a theatre before. For those on the other side of me, the opposite was true. They loved dance theatre, but had never seen the TV series. But like me, both couples were loving the spectacle that was unfolding in front of us all on the stage. That interaction of audience and exciting work is, of course, what we all want to see. In the present environment, I do not for 1 minute take it for granted that this is easy to achieve. A few days from now, the Arts Council welcomes its new national portfolio, informed by our strategy, Let's Create. It'll be in place for the next 3 years. It's an important moment. We'll see the largest ever number of theatres, arts organisations, museums and libraries join our national portfolio. Almost 1,000 organisations receiving regular funding. And of those, more than a quarter will be supported for the first time. Many are in places that have never had an organisation regularly funded by us before. Our total investment will rise to £446 million a year, compared to the £408 million we invested annually during the last portfolio. It'll bring new creative and cultural life to new places and to new people right across England. And I'm highlighting these facts today because in the noise about the popular and unpopular specific decisions, the bigger picture can sometimes become overshadowed. It's of course right that the Arts Council is held to account. And it's inevitable that what we don't fund attracts more scrutiny than what we do. But if we reduce the overall picture to focus only on a few organisations, if we make that debate either or, about access or excellence, as if they exist only in opposition, if we start to argue for one art form at the expense of another, then there's a danger that our perspective becomes too narrow and too short-term, focusing on individual elements but failing to see the big picture. I believe that picture is much more complex. It's an entire cultural ecosystem and its interdependencies. As a development agency for creativity and culture across England, we need to take a broader view. Our strategy, Let's Create, is not singularly focused. It's about balance and rebalancing. It's about stewardship for here and now and for the future. We recognise the complexity of the environment in which we invest, with each part of the theatre industry reliant and working interdependently with the other, commercial, subsidised and not-for-profit sectors. We do not think in categorical terms. We're not an either-or organisation. Rather, I see us as an and organisation. So we're here for the regular audience members who loyally support their local theatre month in, month out. And we're here for that couple in Bradford who've not been to the ballet before. We're here for every art form: theatre, music, dance, literature, the visual arts. We're here for everything within and between those forms: opera, musical theatre, jazz, circus, carnival, and more. We're here for museums, we're here for libraries, we're here for arts and health, arts and tech, arts and the environment. We're here for every geography: north, south, east, west, and for big cities, post-industrial towns, and small villages. And the most important and of all, we're here for audiences. Because audiences demand work they can access, and they demand work of the highest quality. The people who pay their taxes and play the national lottery, it's their money that we invest, creating a virtuous circle. It enables creative people and creative organisations to innovate, to take risks, to be bold, to go on new creative adventures, and to surprise and challenge audiences, participants, and visitors. And the more we delight and astound audiences, the more they're prepared to support the case for more public investment in our arts and culture. One of the Arts Council's balancing acts is the need to consider the health of the sector at this moment in time and to sustain its long-term viability into the future. And I really do understand how challenging some of our decisions have been for people working in organisations we've previously funded. And in no way do I minimise the shock and the uncertainty they face. And we're playing our part to ensure that we can make sure that that change is managed as compassionately and as fairly as possible. And this includes our £10.5 million transition funding programme for organisations leaving our portfolio, and the £8.6 million of Transform programme investment for organisations where we've reduced funding and business models need rethinking. To take just one example, as part of the Transform programme, we'll be offering Welsh National Opera £3.25 million in addition to their annual MPO settlement that we announced back in November to help them adapt. Like all good performance pieces, including the Peaky Blinders production, Let's Create was a collaborative work. We listened to the public, we engaged with arts organisations, theatres, museums and libraries. We took account of debate in academia and in publications like The Stage. And this MPO investment is about delivering Let's Create, making sure the creative talent of every person can flourish, giving people the chance to experience amazing culture in more places, and making sure that England's cultural sector is innovative, inclusive, collaborative, and world-renowned. Although Let's Create was devised before the pandemic, its ideas are grounded in the need for change and the ability to adapt. Based on knowledge, understanding, and experience of the past, I believe together we created a forward-looking document that's highly relevant to our uncertain environment. I believe it's informed a portfolio of almost 1,000 organisations that can respond with courage and imagination to uncertainty. But what does this round of MPO investment mean more specifically for the future of theatre? Let's start with the data. It means theatres and theatre companies will receive more money than any other art form, £111.9 million a year. That's a rise of around £9 million a year on what we currently invest. It means 196 theatres and theatre companies in our new national portfolio. 48 of them are new joiners. It means funding 279 touring organisations that work not only in theatre but in other art forms and disciplines too. A total investment there of almost £198 million a year, bringing high-quality creative activities and cultural experiences to our villages, towns and cities. But it's not just a list of facts. Our new portfolio means delivering the ambition of Let's Create too, engaging the young, presenting more theatre to more people in new ways, embracing the idea that innovation, ambition, and access are not in opposition to each other, but rather feed each other. Our decisions will mean more children and young people will have the chance to see theatre closer to where they live, to work with theatre makers to tell their own stories, and to have their talent nurtured, shaping a new generation of theatre audiences and theatre makers. That's reflected in our funding of organisations like Mortal Fools in Northumberland. They co-create theatre with thousands of young people every year. And Zest Theatre in Lincoln. They give young people a voice through work in theatre, festivals, public spaces, schools, and digital spaces. Our decisions will mean more theatre taken in more ways to more people. 36 of the theatre companies and theatres we support will be in places where historically our investment has been too low. This includes North Devon Theatres, who run the Queen's Theatre in Barnstaple and the landmark Ilfracombe, and their sister theatres in Peterborough, the Key Theatre and the New Theatre. It includes our investment in Prescott and Shakespeare North Playhouse. It includes the Old Courts in Wigan and Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch. It means touring through 82 new national portfolio organisations. These include Northern Lines and Ad Infinitum, both known for attracting and developing new audiences through the use of innovative form and content. And we've increased our investment in the National Rural Touring Forum to reach previously underserved places. Our decisions will mean that we have a performance ecosystem in which different ways of making and presenting theatre at all scales is valued and celebrated. It means investing in iconic names recognisable across the globe, like the Royal Shakespeare Company, where I loved seeing The Tempest just a few weeks back, or the stunning reinterpretation of Phaedra at the National Theatre, which I saw a few days ago. It means investing in theatres with outstanding reputations for producing and presenting new work in places from Liverpool to Sheffield, Ipswich to Plymouth, and many in between. And an act of balancing which we thought and worried long and hard about, maintaining enough investment in London to support theatre ready for national and international stages. And it also means nurturing and investing in theatres and theatre makers who champion established and new voices in the rest of the country too. Like the really exciting work I've seen as I've travelled around the country in the weeks since we announced our investment programme. Plays like Rob Ward's Love It If We Beat Them about football, love and politics at Live Theatre in Newcastle. And on the same day in Newcastle, at Northern Stage, I also caught Kin by Ipswich-based Gecko, which looks at the themes of migration, belonging, and home. In Coventry, I saw the theatrical adaptation of Manjeet Mann's novel Run Rebel. It's a co-production between the Belgrade in Coventry, Pilot Theatre, York Theatre Royal, Mercury Theatre Colchester, and Derby Theatre. And just a couple of days ago, at Liverpool's Royal Court, I saw Cosmic, the debut play of Joe McNally, who learned his craft at that theatre's playwright development programme. And I loved Maxine Peake and Serial Davis's Betty, a Sort of Musical at the Royal Exchange in Manchester, just as I loved Ballet Black's Nina by Whatever Means, which premiered at the Barbican a couple of weeks ago. I'm full of hope for what our latest investment, rooted in the principles of Let's Create, will achieve. But I'm also acutely aware that there's nervousness and fatigue among all those we support, including in theatre and the performing arts. The pandemic had a huge impact on our sector. It led to innovation and experimentation in how to engage with audiences. It showed the creativity, adaptability, and resilience of all those who work in our world. We made the case, along with sector bodies, unions, and networks, for supporting the sector through those unprecedented times. And the government's response was unprecedented too. The investment through the Culture Recovery Fund helped our sector survive the immediate threat that COVID-19 posed. But the aftershocks of the pandemic are still being felt. The Association of Leading Visitor Attractions has recently confirmed that visitor numbers, particularly those from overseas, have not recovered to pre-pandemic levels, while the audience agency's research shows attendance at live events might be less frequent than it was before the pandemic. I'm very pleased that we, alongside sector organisations such as Salt UK Theatre, were able to provide valuable evidence to the government to support them in their recent decision to extend the theatre, orchestra and museum and galleries tax reliefs for a further 2 years. Our analysis suggests this will mean at least an additional £80 million of income across the next 2 years for our funded footprint, and an estimated £350 million for the wider sector through to 2026. It'll support jobs, innovation, and new work, and in turn will support the economies of our villages, towns, and cities. It's a positive indication that the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, and our new Culture Secretary, Lucy Fraser, recognise the important role the creative and cultural sector plays in our national life. Uncertainty remains, though. You tell us life as a freelance is even more precarious than usual right now. You tell us you're worried about the skills drain that has led to shortages of staff. You're worried about audiences who haven't returned to the levels you would like and what that means for income and cash flow. You're worried about the future of touring, particularly at the mid and large scale. You're worried about the impact of the cost of living on just what you can achieve. You tell us you're worried about pressures on public funding from us and from local authorities. You tell us you are tired and weighed down by all these worries. And we understand why you're feeling that way. We understand you need to balance innovation and survival. The continuation of the tax relief will help, but we know that some of you are feeling more cautious. You're looking at consolidating what you do. It's understandable. What I would say to you is, we're listening, we hear you, and we'll work with you to deal with all of those challenges. So what's the Arts Council doing to help make theatre and the sector as a whole, to make sure that it comes out of these uncertain times fit for the future? One thing I want to keep reminding you is that we're taking the pressure off organisations in our new portfolio to feel that they have to deliver exactly at the level of ambition they stated when they first applied to this round. We know that things have changed since we launched the application process, that the investment we provide won't necessarily go as far as you'd hoped. We want to reassure MPOs that your focus should be on doing as much as you can in the circumstances and on doing it really well. We accept that this may mean less risk-taking in the short term. Our funding agreements for the new portfolio recognise the limitations of organisations in these pressured times. But there are other ways we can support you too. One way is by developing opportunities to explore new ways of working and showcasing new artistic talent. That can be seen in our £3 million investment in 2 pilot producing hubs in Bradford and in Derby. These collaborations are successfully testing new approaches to producing, presenting and touring a wide range of theatre and performance. They're supporting the development of new talent and bringing in new audiences. It's also reflected in our support for showcasing talent on an international stage, where we've invested £2.25 million in the Horizon Showcase to connect artists with international promoters and networks. From this, there have already been tours or plans for touring in Australia, Canada, the USA, Mexico, and more. And we're planning to create further versions of Horizon in the future. We're also supporting the return and growth of audiences in the wake of the pandemic. One way we're doing this is through Illuminate, our new audience data platform. It'll give our funded organisations access to meaningful insights about who engages with their activities. Another way is through a partnership with the Arts Councils of Wales and Northern Ireland, with Creative Scotland and with the BFI to create a nationwide access scheme for disabled, deaf and neurodivergent people. We'll share more with you on this later in the summer. We're also looking at what more we can do to support organisations and individuals with practical and useful development tools and by adapting our funding programmes. We shape this work by listening to you, tuning into your needs. Later this spring, we'll be launching our Transforming Governance programme. It'll offer workshops, mentoring and specialist advice to creative and cultural organisations looking for help in how to improve their oversight. This programme itself has an eye on the future, as it's open not only to those whom we currently support, but also to those hoping to be part of our next national portfolio. We're reviewing how we can better support touring. Our National Lottery Project Grants programme was relaunched in 2021 with £12 million a year earmarked to support touring. And although some parts of the ecology, such as the small-scale and rural activity, are in reasonable health, we know challenges exist elsewhere, particularly around who will bear the risk of new mid-scale and large-scale tours. That's why we're looking again at the design of that ring-fenced funding. We're listening to what different stakeholders have to say, and that will help shape plans to support renewed confidence for this vital part of the theatre ecosystem. We're also looking at how our National Lottery Project Grants can work better for individual applicants. It's part of the work we're doing to provide more support for freelancers, recognising that they are the vital talent, the key source of creativity, inspiration and drive upon which the performing arts depend for their success. We've also increased the individual amount of money for which individuals can apply for our Developing Your Creative Practice programme. And I'm also pleased to be able to tell you today that in addition to all of those projects, we'll be launching a new round of our capital investment programme. It'll have a total budget of £20 million for this coming financial year from April, and it'll provide grants of up to £750,000 for successful applicants to help them operate safely in the wake of the pandemic, improving access, supporting technical innovation, and working in more environmentally responsible ways. And for our part, we'll continue to advocate to government for increased investment in publicly funded theatre and performance arts. I know the pressure on funding is a huge concern to our sector. I will always be greedy for more investment in culture. I will never hesitate to make the case because I know how much good work could be funded and the positive impact it has on people's lives. The Chancellor has talked about growing the economy, and the theatre and performing arts are already net contributors, and they contribute a great deal to our nation's economic well-being. Our latest published figures, prepared for us by the Centre for Economic and Business Research, show the gross added value of the performing arts to the economy was almost £2.4 billion. But we also know that the benefits go much, much deeper than economic contribution. In fact, that's not even the half of it. Bringing the world's greatest stories to the stage, being a source of connection and pride in communities, multiplying happiness and making meaning. These are things that can't be measured by GVA. With you, we want to work to show the incredible offer our sector makes to the public and how that can justify an ask on the public purse that will enable you to be the best you can be for your audiences and communities. I mentioned earlier the adaptation of Phaedra that I'd seen at the National. It's subtitled A New Play by Simon Stone, after Euripides, Seneca and Racine. It's a play that through thousands of years has been witnessed the theatre's ability to survive economic slowdowns, pandemics and even the fall of the Roman Empire. And it's witnessed theatre's ability to embrace innovation, from the earliest adoption of electric lighting to making full use of the opportunities the latest digital technology has to offer. The future of theatre and the performing arts lies in the willingness to embrace the new, the bold, and the innovative. That is your superpower. It will enable you to do more than survive, to move forward, to flourish, and surely to grow even when the future seems uncertain. I believe the investments we've made and the decisions we've taken will help theatre, the performing arts, and the wider creative and cultural sector to do just that. And as we face a future together, I want to finish by saying one thing to you all, and that is thank you. Thank you for all that you do, for audiences, for places, for people whose stories need to be told and to be heard. At the Arts Council, we will stand with you, and we will support you in doing that. And we want to be here to having an open and honest conversation, to be able to say to people, to celebrate what you do, but to understand the challenges that you face. We want you to be able to deliver, to dazzle, and to light new audiences and existing audiences. And we're very, very committed to doing that today, tomorrow, and a long time in the future. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Are these working? Brilliant. Have a drink of water.
Thank you.
Great. So the way this is going to work is I have some pre-prepared questions from theatre leaders who can't attend today but have emailed me their questions in advance. And I'm going to alternate between those and questions from the floor and from online. So prepare yourselves if you've got a question from the floor. If you would like to ask a question, hold your hand up. I will then send a microphone to you. You do need to talk into the microphone so that people online can hear you. And please introduce yourself before you ask your question. So, Darren, thank you for that. And thank you for joining us today. We're going to go straight in the deep end with a question from Nika Burns, who is a West End producer and theatre owner. And her question was, in the context of what has happened following 100% cuts to Oldham Coliseum and English National Opera, what has the Arts Council learned itself from the recent funding round?
Well, I think I'd answer it in two parts, if I may. So first of all, or even three parts. First of all, just to take those two individual examples. So with Oldham Coliseum, we ring-fenced £1.85 million outside of the national portfolio to invest in theatre and performance in Oldham. So that's absolutely part of what's going forward and is there. I do understand, absolutely appreciate for those people who are involved in Oldham Coliseum, how tough that is, and also for the audiences who are very fond of, and love what happens there. But that as a building has been, as a physical building, has been under threat for the last decade or so, and that was something that was very much known. We don't actually fund the building, we fund the work that takes place there, and we will continue to be committed to funding that work. We've also given additional transitional funding to the organisation to help them over the next few months as well. With English National Opera, right at the start, we ring-fenced a budget of £17 million, of which we've paid out £11.46 million so far, which is for the next financial year. And so, again, we're having ongoing conversations with the organisation about future funding requirements. I'm very determined, as I've said publicly many times, that we're absolutely supportive of opera in this country. We're absolutely supportive of English National Opera as an organisation, and we had to make that decision because we were told to move £24 million outside of London. So we made that decision, and we're committed to finding a new way of working with that organisation. As an organisation from the Arts Council, we're very reflective, and so we have three values. One is we're ambitious, two, we care, and three, we learn. And one of the things we'll do all the way through this process will be a full review of every part of what we do. And we do that with all of our funding mechanisms. We'll look for everything from the writing and publication of the guidelines through to the experience of people who are both successful and unsuccessful in making the applications, and then the decisions and the announcements. And that will inform the next funding round, which will happen in 3 years' time. But we absolutely will learn, and we'll listen, and we'll talk to people. And that's important because we're custodians of public money, and that's what we have to do. So you won't get me going out and briefing against organisations or individuals. It just won't happen. So sometimes we can struggle sometimes to maybe get some of the things across. So it was thank you to the stage today for giving the opportunity just to be able to clarify some of the things there, because I hope you'd agree that the totality of what we're doing is not just about one or two organisations, important as all of those organisations are, and I'm not trying to minimise that.
Thank you, Darren. We're going to go online first. Any questions, or we'll go to the floor? We're going to go to the floor. Okay, so I can see a hand up in the centre there. I think that's Jack. Oh, can you wait for the mic to come to you, please?
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Darren. Jack Gamble. Hello? Hey. Jack Gamble from the Campaign for the Arts. In 2018, when the Arts Council was conducting With Britain Thinks its research to inform the 10-year strategy, Let's Create, that research found that 76% of the cultural sector as a whole believed that the arts would be important for the next 10 years. But among the general public, that figure was only 30%, less than a third. And that's despite the fact that 88% of the public engage with the arts every year. My question to you is, why do you think there is that big difference? And do you agree that, especially today, it's fantastic at forums like this that we can come together to address the really serious issues within the industry, but do you agree that it's also absolutely vital that we use forums like this to look outwards and think about how we make the case for this being important in the country at large and with the general public?
Thank you, Jack. I think it's a really interesting question that we've pondered quite a lot. And it was interesting, the research you talk about there, and we did a lot of other research, a lot of focus groups we did where we sat down with people who we had funding relationships with and people like them who we didn't have funding relationships with. They were either audiences or practitioners. And it was really interesting because some of the things around this, I think, come down to labels. and some of the language around it. So we would ask, you're absolutely correct, we'd ask people, are you into the arts? And they'd say no. But then they belong to a reading group. They'd sing in a choir. They'd go to see the pantomime every year. And actually, their engagement with the arts was far more deep. So sometimes I wonder if the actual language that we all use, and crikey, the Arts Council, we're good at this, and I know across the sector we're good at this, we like our jargon, and sometimes I think that can be a barrier to people, and we always need to challenge that. But I'm absolutely believe that, I said this, I am quite militant about making the case for further investment, because I know how much that investment can do. And what it can do to change people's lives. I think that what we do at the Arts Council, in the end, if you step right back, is we create happier lives up and down this country. What we do is we invest in people like you, organisations like you, to actually make something different and better in people's lives. And that's the case for me. And, I came from, the classical music world. I was at Classic FM, and we, before I came here, and we were very much, because it was a private organisation and we had no public funding, we were very much about talking to audiences first. And I think one of the things we tried very hard to do with Let's Create was to actually think about the audiences. So sure, we've got to work and support the people who supply and create those with work for the audiences. That's really important. But they're not the only game in town. We need to think about the audiences. And the reason for that is because it's their money that we're spending, and that's important too.
Thank you. Let's pick another person, and while the mic is coming to them, I will ask one of my questions off my sheet of paper. So this gentleman in the third row, please. Second row. Great. So while the mic is making its way over, I have a question actually picking up on something that you mentioned in your speech about touring. And this question is from Claire Walker and Hannah Essex, who are the new joint chief executives of SALT UK Theatre. And their question is, touring is at the heart of theatre's nationwide and international appeal, bringing the performing arts to diverse communities. However, a variety of challenges, including rising costs, a reduction in local authority and other public funding, and decreasing audience appetite for risk, is leading to fewer touring productions. What more can the Arts Council do to take some of the risk out of touring in order to encourage more producers to take their shows on the road? So I suppose that's really asking for you to expand a little bit on what you referenced in your speech.
Yeah, I mean, and we absolutely recognise the challenges, particularly at mid-scale and large-scale. And I think what we're doing at the moment is, and we're doing it fast. This is not something we're trying to kick into the long grass for years and years in the future, but is to really understand what are the pinch points, and to go into them in quite some detail, and then to understand what are the interventions that we can usefully make. Sometimes that will be convening, sometimes that will be investment, sometimes that might be advocating, for example, to other partners like local authorities mentioned in the question there. And we'll come up with that pretty soon. So Hannah Lake, our Director of Touring, Neil Darlison, our Director of Theatre, are leading that work. It's meaningful, it will happen. We will share it with the stage when we have some conclusions, but we know we have to deal with this and work with people to deal with it. I think the other thing as a question I would throw out to everybody is also to understand how we might work better together, because when we talk to individual parts of the touring ecology, people will talk to us from their own points of view. And it may well be we need to see some shifts there as well. I think the Arts Council will need to make some shifts, and so I'm not preaching to people, but I think also the individual parts of touring will need to understand how, for the good of the audiences, for the good of the people who work in creating and sharing those touring product, whichever art form it's in, we need to make sure that people come together and we don't find there's either practices that have been around for a long time, or sometimes people maybe not being as quite thoughtful and generous as they might be to other parties. We need to work on that. I think we know it's a problem. We want to work together. I'm confident that working with the expertise in this room and beyond, we'll be able to do that.
Thank you. Very quickly, a follow-up question from Ed Snape, who is a touring producer. He wanted to know what progress had been made on the idea of a guarantee against loss scheme that could help underwrite more ambitious commercial theatre projects to encourage London drama that is too often seldom seen in the regions and to give the touring sector a boost. So that's a specific part of this plan.
Yeah, I mean, the honest answer is our learning from if the Arts Council provides a guarantee against loss is that it goes into the budget as a grant. And so I think we have to be more sophisticated than that, and we're understanding how we might be able to co-invest in some sort of way, not because the Arts Council wants to make a profit or anything like that, but so that actually there's more of a virtuous circle of putting money into future work. That actually requires us to have some different ways of working, and Treasury would probably have to approve that sort of thing. So we're trying to understand what we can do within the limits of us as an arm's length body, but it's something that we want to do. I don't think it'll be guarantee against loss, but I think being able to co-invest on equal terms in some way, I think is interesting. We're very interested in different financial models. One of the things that came out of the pandemic is obviously we now have a loan book that we run, and we didn't have before. So those larger organisations have loans that will last for the next 20 years. So for us, that's a new area of expertise. Ourselves and Sport England are doing that, working together. So because the same thing happened in the sports world. So we're very open to new ways of working. We've got more expertise in this area in the Arts Council, and we're really interested to think about innovative ideas and put them forward to see if we can get them to happen.
Thank you. And we'll go to the gentleman in the second row.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Mann. I'm an independent theatre maker and a member of the trade unions, Equity and the Writers Guild. Thank you, Darren, for your speech. It's really good to hear you talking about matters that really matter to us on the ground, really, and to hear practical response versus sort of just pie in the sky stuff. I guess I've got three parts to my question. I guess the first is more a comment. So it's great you're talking about connecting overseas, etc. And I would add to your list things that are quite inspiring that are coming up. There's Entitled, Miss Saigon, that will be coming through from Manchester Royal Exchange and Young Vic, which will be really inspiring, I think, for theatre makers here. And commercially, off West End, there's Allegiance, which is based on George Takei's true life story. So I welcome the fact you talk about connecting to icons, and Allegiance is on for another week, I think. So.
Can we focus on questions, please?
So that leads into the question of, firstly, what can we as stakeholders do to help Arts Council, etc., to make the case for more percentage GDP of arts funding, so everyone working together? And then secondly, those are examples I gave from overseas, etc. We had last week the Casey report about institutionalized racism in the police force. There was obviously Macpherson 24 years ago, and Eclipse report to the Arts Council. I think for communities like Gypsy Roma Traveller, Eastern Southeast Asian, Eastern European, they probably read these reports and think things haven't really changed for them. So I'd like to hear you address the bigger picture about GDP, and perhaps you can call it institutionalized racism, you can call it structural inequalities, whatever you call it, your thoughts about that, and how can we build for a better future? Thank you, Alistair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So I'll take the second question first and then the first, if I may. We have made some difference in this new portfolio, but I don't believe we're where we should be. And on many protected characteristics, we've made some movement, but not as much as I would like to see, and that's a journey of travel. We have a real desire to make sure that the investments we make reflect the way England looks and feels today in the 21st century, not the way it looked and felt 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And that means that we've got a lot of new organisations that have come in, and we will continue to work to develop new organisations who are able to work with us in the future as well. So that's an absolute aim. We've worked very well with Elevate as a programme, and there will be another round of Elevate ahead of the next national portfolio organisation in announcement in 3 years' time. I think one of the things we're seeing is when you look at the data, there is a shift there, and we will challenge ourselves on that data. We will publish all the data. There will be no hiding away, and sometimes the data will tell, I suspect, a good story, and sometimes it will show up weaknesses, and we need to actually challenge where we have those weaknesses. So, I was in Leeds on Friday at South Asian Arts UK, and a big uplift in terms of our investment there. What that's resulting in straight away is new jobs, and literally they showed me their new organogram, and it's exciting. As a direct result of MPO funding, there will be new people being hired to work in that organisation, and so there'll be small steps, but they're the right way to go, and we need to keep challenging ourselves on that. One of the areas I think where I would just say where I think as a sector we really have to challenge ourselves is on disability. and I still think we've got a long way to go. And we as the Arts Council, I count us in this as well, in terms of making sure that we're fair and equitable in terms of our workforces and also for our audiences. And I am genuinely excited about the access card that we're working on with the other arts councils and the BFI. I think that could make a really big difference. And Andrew Miller, who's on our National Council, has been a real champion of that and is our champion for that and works really well. On the other question of what you can do to help, I think, and this is not a trite answer, the first part is actually to continue to create brilliant and new and innovative work that talks to people and connects people and tells their stories and shows that the public funding is relevant to their lives, and that's really important. But the other thing I would say, we've got 270-something new organisations in our portfolio from essentially the 1st of April, so from this weekend, and it will be great for them to go out and start really shouting about what they're doing and talking to their audiences and showing that public funding is making a difference to what they're doing. I want those new audiences over time to become the new establishment, and then another set of new audiences, new organisations to come in behind them. And I think that's a really exciting prospect. So, we are investing heavily in new audiences, in new places, new organisations, in new places that hit new audiences, and we want them all to understand that it's actually taxpayers and National Lottery players' monies that's enabling that growth to happen for them.
Thank you very much. We're going to have a very quick final question from online because we haven't gone yet. So, Matt, could you read that out for us, please?
Hello? Is this on? Yeah. Peter Mooney online would like to know, Darren, what kind of ongoing support will you have for the new theatre companies joining the portfolio?
It's a good question, because I think sometimes, despite our best efforts, I do understand that the Arts Council can feel a bit inaccessible when you come to us for the first time, and sometimes our systems and processes can feel a little bit unfriendly. We try to make them not unfriendly. Hopefully you realise we're actually a bunch of human beings, and we try to be as human as we can, but we sometimes, because of the rules and regulations and legalities of public funding, it can be quite challenging. But we'll work really hard. One of the things we're doing is making sure that we can free up our relationship managers to do more work in terms of being a development agency, and we see that as really, really important. We think, I think we're the National Development Agency for Creativity in this country. Part of that has got to be able to make sure that when we bring new organisations into our portfolio, when they're having meaningful funding relationships with us for the first time, that it doesn't all go wrong. And so we need to be able to put an arm around their shoulder to help them through. I would say, if I was offering a piece of advice to anybody who's new in the portfolio, I would say, talk to us. It's really hard for us to deal with things that we don't know about, or big surprises too far down the process. I would encourage you. We're talking about governance. Governance is so important. My view is when organisations, when things go wrong, there's usually a problem in their governance, and that, so it's really, really important. And we're very grateful to those people who give up all their time and expertise to be, non-executive directors and chairs of all of our cultural organisations. But keep talking to us. We don't like surprises. We want to be helpful. We want you to be the new establishment. We want you to be a successful applicant next time round too.
Thank you very much. And can we have a round of applause for Darren Henley, please?